perhaps are the experts and not I. I'll go through quickly the PowerPoint presentation, and then I also want to draw your attention to some wonderful biblio resources. Law of Israel, Presentation for Israeli Culture and Society, Portland State University, for Dr. Nina Spiegel, November 2012. Sources of law. I was very interested to look at the historical reference for the British mandate's influence with the British common law, and then the diaspora jurisdictional influences, which I was very struck by the geographic diaspora in almost scooping a comprehensive picture of the law and pulling it back into the source as the Aliyahs returned us home. Rabbinical authorities in the citation of our long-term conflict between church and state must not be underestimated in terms of originating the origins of the law. Within the legal analysis, there is a legal positivism which posits the law is the law, or legal realism which looks at the law as it stands, and the gradual drift from Enlightenment era into a natural law basically had it at its premise an erasure of the religious origin of the law. So it was very curious how the religious commingling with the new spirit that restored Israel moved us forward into the future of the law. And the interest in civil liberties within Israel, as well as a right of return and who is eligible for the return, as well as refugee policy. I am aware currently of a current refugee crisis with some effect pertaining to the Ethiopian Aliyah, but then there's also refugees who are literally war-torn refugees, and the refugee policy must be addressed. The secularism versus religious influences, I think, have been drawn forth so clearly in this class. The core focus of this presentation is a vanishing focus, and the vanishing is the concept of a constitution. And I've heard many, many criticisms that say, oh, Israel doesn't have a constitution. But I think we need to reframe our understanding of what is going on with a very new nation in terms of the intense pressure that the nation has been under to fortify itself against attack. And then this false dilemma that has been foisted on the Israeli people as they are developing their constitution is a work in progress. And in a sense, to transform our understanding of what the law is and what the law can be. My favorite Latin phrase about law is lex ferenda, what the law can be. So we should always remember that the law is a work in progress reflective of our current value systems. So is the Constitution necessary? Are the basic laws sufficient? And are they an equivalent presentation of legal significance? And who has the most rights? Are women fully human in Israel? The student Barak made a notice about women who face pressures in their Orthodox tradition. So I was very concerned about any kinds of acts of violence that may take place under the cloak of Orthodox cultures. And in our American schema, some of the Orthodox communities have been having crises in terms of how they deal with women who feel that their marriage is not fully consensual. Or there's a young woman who wrote a book called Unorthodox about her experience in a Haredi New York culture, which I think that signifies to me that we need an investigation that all marriage arrangements or marriage contracts are fully preservational of the autonomy of all persons. Very interesting subject is GLBTQ communities with equality and law in Israel. And as the stronghold of democracy in the Middle East, the treatment of gay and lesbians in Middle East countries is of deep concern, and Israel's leadership in promoting human rights for gay and lesbian people is something that Israel is incredibly proud of and has an immense capacity to create global reform in that area. International law, does it exist? There is a large misconception among persons that international law is fully functional or restorative in its nature regarding the needs for international human rights to be respected. What has been Israel's role in international law? We see that Israel arose from an international law crisis of epidemic proportions. Israel is the birthplace of international law. And our deep reverence for the good work in international law with Nuremberg and with the trial of Eichmann has impacted our perceptions of international law, so that we must make a way forward so we can have equitable international legal stratospheres for all persons. Intelligence agency and the law. I felt that this was a most incredible problem in human understanding, is that the concept of the extra-legal, an extra-legal means in the absence of actual justice, is a very important part of how the law is functioning. Does good intelligence empower law? Does good law oversee intelligence operations? Extrajudicial measures, assassination, and the Mossad. I like to study the CIA, and I read the 1953 CIA assassination manual. And assassinations are known as extrajudicial killings. And the reputation of the Mossad for engaging in extra-legal means is something of concern. I would like to draw your attention to Ephraim Halevi's excellent lecture at the Wilson Center, where he discusses the possibility for peace in Israel. In my research, his role appears to be controversial among some people who may be more pro-war or pro-peace, but his role is a middle ground. And what I loved most about his long presentation is his describing of the necessity for dignity for all persons, history for all persons. We cannot obliterate anyone's language, anyone's culture, and anyone's religion. And when cultures have different value systems in terms of who is considered human or who has human rights, there has to be a way where dignity is involved in every single step of the process. And cyber warfare, very important component. One of the coolest articles I saw recently was the young Gen Y as they are shaping the face of Israel's information systems, the Twitter accounts, the technological capacity. And I think our eyes should be to the young to inspire what the future of Israel is going to be, how we want to shape the law. So issues of concern are cybersecurity, broadband permeation and cultural norms, intellectual property, and the peer-to-peer and youth culture, copyleft and Stuxnet. Critical issues: women need more involvement in Knesset, human rights oversight in prisons, human rights oversight in military operations. Women need total physical safety from gender-based violence, civilian and non-civilian. Women need positive role models of leadership in Israel and the law. And that's where I have some excellent resource at the jwa.org, which has Jewish Women, a comprehensive historical encyclopedia of the history of women in the law, which is exciting. Lawfare. Law is waged by media and PR. Law is essentially smoke and mirrors, depending on how you look at it. And lawfare is the concept that we can go out there and affect the law and change the law and build better laws and build better understandings about what the law is and what the law can be. Continued media involvement, freedom of the press, abatement of war, and total open information, which of course is totally controversial to have all total surveillance. But as with schools and with Social Security administrations, all of our registration for any kind of welfare benefits in schools is being data-based. So any kind of naivete about the databasing of persons should be discarded. Digital transparency, law, code, and theory online. I wanted to heavily promote the high level of availability of digitization projects with the law, which is incredibly exciting. And that basically means a democratization of justice and legal education, where we can all hop online and read all the laws of all the worlds and get in there and make a difference and make the kinds of change that will help the world. So healthy multilateral discussion, international information groups, continued good work in the fields of gay rights, environmental law development is a very important issue. We will always value peace. The ecological toll of war is the unassessed toll. Preserving a space is important, but we have to think of the space that we breathe, and that is one of my hugest concerns besides human rights with the current Middle East crisis, that we have to assess the pollution of war. And any detriment to the water, and the ecosystem, and the land will be absorbed in biotoxicity in our cells and affect the future generations. Long-term diseases and biomedical effects must be studied. In Israel law, the Holocaust reparations were an important foundational principle from an international law perspective towards developing how we assess all tragedies and disease, how we appropriate the Rwanda Tribunal, how we appropriate the International Criminal Court. And this foundational move, some of which is spearheaded in the United States under that Zedek, to move forward a place where we can say, money is not everything. There is something more important than money, and that is dignity. And when that has been robbed of you, empowering our survivors and the importance of genocide accountability is one of the strongest legacies of Israel. Israel Municipal Code, actually Barak is dealing with a parking ticket right now. And that's why he's not here, and I'm so sad about that. But also, moving through these issues, sexual harassment. My friend Keith Fink has an incredible paper which does a comprehensive analysis of multiple sexual harassment policies across the world. Israel has more options for women to go to more councils in legal avenues, whether it's an arbitration code with your labor commission or the civil courts or the criminal courts. And so I found that inspiring, that there's something we can learn from every legal system in the world. Question, lex ferenda, vet zedek. International responsibility. Combating anti-Semitism in the Middle East is very ultimate, and I'm very inspired by the work of Dershowitz on anti-Semitism at Harvard. We must not forget the dark eras of anti-Semitism in the American university system, in the university systems of Germany, which under Project Paperclip, we brought some very dangerous people to the United States to be pioneering very severe abusive tendencies towards the propaganda of the youth. Questions?
Thank you. Questions for Mary? Maybe we'll start with undergraduate. Taylor? So, in the issues of like the safety of women and women's rights, is Israel particularly high for like westernized nations?
One of the concerns, I think it depends across generations. One of the concerns I found was a dismissive attitude towards, with a trigger warning, military rape. And it was considered the just spoil of war, which is totally offensive to a modern sensibility. Rape is never justified. And so this caused a big outrage online and lots of threads. And following it, I see that there, just like with every issue, there are many divergent threads. But the issue of that in particular is something that must go hand in hand with the defense of Israel. And I think the protective policies for women in terms of service, we here have a huge epidemic that affects men and women in America. So in a sense, the slowdown on women's total involvement in the military, I would say, is possibly an answer in lieu of the comprehensive answer.
So do you not think that it can really be resolved until the conflict in Israel is better resolved?
I think there's conflict. There's conflict in every situation. With this document on the women's law in Israel, women are getting into the Supreme Court. They're getting into the Knesset. They're in the Mossad. They are participating in the democracy. And that movement, which was the universal sort of social ethos of the 20th century, modernity, needs to be taken to the next level. And I think Israel is the place to have it done, where the Knesset can be 50% female. That can be normal. We can have a normalization of women's voices. And the normalization of women's voices and every possible minority group will help us solve the riddles. Because I think it can't be decided by people who are aware of that kind of crisis.
Other questions for Mary? Guy?
I was curious in listening to you. By the way, you're the most passionate person. I'd vote for you. Anyway, no, I'm serious. That was passionate. That's great. I hear, and I think you implied, that maybe all laws are not applied equally. Because in the Orthodox communities, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that primacy is given to the opinion of the patriarch of the family. If he said something happened, it happened. If he said, no, I don't think it happened, then the cops go on their beat. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. What do you think? What do you know?
My personal tendencies are that any religion which employs gender discrimination as its forefront is exerting a propagandistic influence on the minds of the young. So if you grow up with men in authority at all times, whether it's Catholic or whatever, that exerts a control on the women's mentality, so they never reach true self-authorization. And I think within Judaic culture, which I love so much, that is a problem I have. And I embrace fully women's full participation in the religion as well as the democracy.
But the question was enforcement of the law.
Enforcement of the law. And it depends on what you mean. Do you mean a rabbinical council? And that versus the civic law. And that's where the church and state is operating like different valences, where if you have rabbinical authority enforcing a certain social code, and then you also have a civic law, there could be a hidden oppression that needs. Our civic guys want human rights for all. Does that answer your question?
No.
Not even quite. I'm so sorry.
Mary, maybe you can talk a little bit more about the relationship between the areas, and this might be a little bit outside of this, so feel free to let me know if that's the case, but where the rabbinic authorities have, where they have the authority over the laws versus where the state does. Because I think Guy's question is kind of getting toward where's the state in charge and where are the rabbinical authorities in charge.
I got really lost into the details, and I actually studied a lot of the purity laws pertaining to women in their biological nature. And it was all new to me when I was looking into this. And there was I actually was very interested in studying Islam and studying it with an open mind, and treatment of women in any field. I think there's a kind of a jump the gun mentality of saying, oh, that's oppressive. But there's another way you can see, oh, that's actually very respectful. And I think it's confusing respect for oppression is one of the largest mistranslations. But in terms of property rights and inheritance and marriage transactions, the loss of civic rights is of concern.
I'll give you, rape is against the law, right? Okay.
Yes.
If a cop went into an ultra-Orthodox community and the father said rape has not occurred, do they investigate further? I don't know.
The military situation, the rabbi was essentially saying dismiss this instance of military rape because that's par for the course. And that was offensive to a lot of people. And
well, one of the big issues in Israel is that the family law, issues relating to family and marital concerns, are within the realm of the rabbinic authorities. And so that, and I think a lot of your discussion is really kind of getting at those, one of the unique aspects within Israel is that the state has control over all of these other laws except the area of the marital and family matters. And so that turns into this question, and I think Amy's presentation was also, you're hitting on a lot of these big topics and big issues of, what does that mean? For any Jewish person to get married within Israel, it has to be by an Orthodox rabbi. And so, there's a whole host then issues around women who are not able to get divorces. There's a whole lot of law being done with that as well, because there's no such thing as getting a civil divorce in Israel. So many secular Jews go to Cyprus to get married, or Europe or elsewhere, in order to have a civil marriage or a non-Orthodox Jewish marriage. So, a lot of these kinds of issues fall into that particular way in which Israeli society is structured with its laws. Maybe one last quick question for Mary. Yeah.
Yeah, I have two questions. Well, one question, one statement. A recent Israeli president was sent to jail for I believe rape, or at least sexual harassment, so there is that possibility. But what was the comment you had about the Constitution, or lack thereof? Is there been ever, I've never heard any pressure to create a Constitution.
Well, in my Middle East Studies class, it was almost a derogatory slam at Israel. Oh, well, they don't even have a
Well,
constitution.
the British don't have a Constitution.
Well,
either.
yeah, exactly. And to me, it's a fictitious problem based on a simplistic understanding of the law. That if you understand how the law is moving forward, the law has to be multi-pronged, with the intelligence, with the defense, and with the law, and with the boring law, like traffic codes and municipal law. And having a functional state is the primary goal of a state in its infancy.
Or any time.
Yeah, any town.
I mean, the Soviets had a Constitution. Dictators have always had, often had constitutions.
And a lot of it, I mean, my feeling is that the debate on getting a solid constitution is actually because of the nature of a thriving democracy. Is that having the debates and the tensions between the different elements within the political atmosphere are a sign of a vibrant democracy. And then getting a firm constitution is not so much the issue, but I think it will happen.
And I mean, it gets also, you know, Mary started the presentation with talking about the inheritance from British mandate, and so much of the whole system is taken from the British mandate laws, and that's the whole process with the basic laws and so forth. And you know, this theme that keeps threading through, the reason they don't have a constitution is because of the religious community that feel that, you know, it gets back to that age-old question within Israeli society of the relationship between Jewish law and non-Jewish law, and the idea by the religious community is that if you had a constitution, that would be in replacement of Jewish law.
Right, and the religion holds the only
right,
law.
and so then
Yes.
how do you have a Jewish state that has a that's some sort of constitution that isn't Jewish law, that it's putting something above Jewish law, and that's why they've had the basic laws and not a constitution. Why this debate over a constitution continues to be vociferous, because there's always that problem, that issue that the religious community doesn't want to have something that's not Jewish law.
It's like running two parallel operating systems for two different machines at the same time.
Right.
Not to belittle.
Right. Well, thank you, Mary. Okay, so we are going to take a 10-minute break. So
Anybody wants to
it's like
look
it's
at
3:11.